Brew Strong is brought to you by Blickman Engineering, home of the top-tier brewing stand. Visit them online at blickmanengineering.com.
Brewers, it's time for the beer radio you've been looking for. This is the show that dispels myths, tackles the toughest topics, and makes no apologies for geeking out on beer. Hosted by two guys that drink before they think, Jamil Zainasheff and John Palmer. This is Brew Strong.
Hey, howdy, hey, my brewing brothers and sisters.
Greetings, cretins.
John, it is so good to talk to you again.
You too, man, but you sound so far away.
Yes. It's almost as if you were in another room.
Indeed.
Well, and since you're not here at the Hop Grenade today, and we haven't seen each other for quite a while. After NHC, I went to Japan for a couple of weeks. I've been to Albuquerque, time on the road. But as you will know from having listened to Brewing with Style, I was quite thrilled with the Japanese toilet system and the spray and the washing ability of these things. And I mentioned this to Justin just in passing during the show. He was
Speaking of passing.
He was so taken with it. Lo and behold, I come into the Hop Grenade today, 2 weeks later, and they've completely changed the toilets in the Hop Grenade. Just amazing. Just amazing. You wouldn't. Now, it's not quite the Japanese system. It's a little more Americanized, I would say, or hillbillyized.
So it's a scrub brush hanging next to the toilet.
Oh, no. Much. This is the Hop Grenade. They do things wonderfully down here. So instead of a regular toilet seat, there is a lawn chair, a folding lawn chair. They've spread the material open there in the center, so you've got your hole. And then they're using one of those lawn sprinklers. And so you hit the button and it's and I tell you, it just polishes you clean. It's a little powerful. It does spray up the back of the wall, but so there's a little bit of a brown streak up the wall. But it's you clean as a whistle. Clean as a whistle. This is how Justin does things down here. It's absolutely.
I certainly can't wait to try it out.
Oh yeah, it's a joy. It's a joy. There's so many good things happening here, and I was so thrilled and so touched that Justin would, hear my need for personal cleaning. It, huh? Oh, absolutely, and go to these extremes, these lengths, sparing no expense to improve my pleasure when I'm visiting here at the Hop Grenade. Now, you know who else is like that? You know who else spares no expense to make sure I have pleasure?
Yes. Oh, well, not that part, but spares no expense. Yes, our good friend John Blickman.
Absolutely. Our fine friend John Blickman, our great sponsor of this show, paying for the show so you don't have to. He spares no expense in designing some great equipment and getting it out there to the home brewers. Always fantastic. Like our good friend JP likes to say, John Blickman is innovating your brew day, and he does. Mm-hmm. And it was great to see him at NHC. And again, he took us out to a really nice meal there, right?
That's right.
Yeah, I'm losing track. It seems like he does it every time. So I'm just shocked. Nobody has treated me this nice since my last sugar daddy. But no, again, another person that takes great pride and joy in making sure his customers are satisfied and, coming up with new ways of making sure they are. So if you see John Blickman, make sure at the very least you scream at him, "Brew Strong!" or something, or email him and tell him you appreciate his supporting the show for all these many years. Speaking of measuring and stuff, our friend Trevor from Sacramento, he wrote in asking about units of measure. And he said, "What's up, guys? Been brewing for 2 years now. Quickly, one of his favorite things to do. Found about the Brewing Network, yada, 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 yada." He says, a question about units of measure. He says, "I currently use imperial units to brew, but sometimes I think that using metric would allow me to brew with more precision. Which is better, specific gravity or Plato? Would switching over to metric for other parts of brewing, such as measuring grain weight, mash thickness, mash temperature, boil volume, measuring hops, help me be more precise? Could it help me with repeatability? I feel that the symmetrical approach to measuring things with the metric system using the tenths has potential to make more sense and simplify the process. I also realize it could cause complications for me since everyone else uses imperial." So I think that's a good question from Trevor, and I think it bears some investigation because sometimes. So he says, would it be more precise? I believe since we have the decimal system and we can put decimal places after any number, it's not necessarily more precise. Mm-hmm. It can be easier to be precise, perhaps, or it could be
better resolution,
right? Or you could, depending on the devices you're using to measure things, that could have an effect as well, determining what kind of measurement you're going to use. Yeah. So, and then it's also what you're familiar with. I mean, all of us here in the U.S. are pretty familiar with, what a cup is, what a quart is, what a gallon is, and get an idea of that in your head, and, a pretty good idea what, a pound is. But, when you start going to other things, it could be more difficult. Fahrenheit, we deal in Fahrenheit all the time. And for me, that's a more common measurement. So I'm always dealing in Fahrenheit. I very rarely do things in C, unless it's, a common measurement. Sure. But I'll measure things in, grams, depending on what they are. When you're dealing drugs, grams are really, really your friend. If you're, measuring something much more weighty, like grain, I tend to weigh my grain in pounds for some reason. So.
Sure.
Just a little different here and there.
Well, I think resolution plays a large part in deciding, which measurement system you use. A resolution being the degree to which we can determine a difference in the measurement. How fine a scale we're using. What the resolution is. It's much easier to measure an amount more definitively with a smaller unit, such as grams, than, say, ounces. There being 28 grams in 1 ounce. Mm-hmm. So if our resolution of our measurement system is only in, whole ounces, then that's not a very precise or a very resolute system to measure with compared to grams. Accuracy is, on the other hand, is the degree of validity of that measurement. How close is the instrument to, say, the true number, the true measurement. And then the precision of an instrument is the repeatability of that measurement system, both the resolution of the scale and the accuracy of the instrument play a role in the repeatability. So if you measure the same item, 10 times, what's the the variance around the real reading, and that is your measure your precision. Mm-hmm. The measurement system.
So we've got precision, resolution, and accuracy?
Accuracy, yes.
So those are the three fundamental things about measuring that. But what about convenience? I think one of the things that Trevor's referring to here is, one might be more convenient than the other. So when you need to make some sort of an adjustment, perhaps one's more convenient. Or when conversing with your friend who also brews, maybe something else is more convenient because that's, what they measure in. One thing
that's a very good point.
One thing I always found very convenient was measuring hops in grams, because if I needed to adjust for alpha acid, I could multiply my alpha acid in the recipe times the amount of grams in the recipe. And this would give me my grams of alpha acid, essentially.
Right.
And then I would divide that by the new alpha acid of whatever hops I had. And whatever that was, it could be a higher number or a lower number. And I would end up with, how many grams of hops to use. And it was right back into the same thing. If you tend to do it in ounces and you're, you can do this with grains as well. And you've.
No, I think hops is a good example, Jamil, because as you say, if you try to do the same thing in ounces, it's a much larger unit. And let's say, what was 1.5 ounces, after conversion comes out to 1.8. Mm-hmm. Well, do you go to 1.75 or do you round it up to 2? Does your scale measure, in, say, tenths of ounces and so on? I mean, This is where, using grams, a scale with higher resolution can be very helpful.
Mm-hmm. Even if your scale will read out multiple digits for ounces, for decimal places for ounces, it can be that, let's say you've started to get into pounds and you're like, 1.1 pounds, 1.34 pounds. It's kind of like, okay, pounds and ounces. If your scale is only doing pounds and ounces, then you're like, okay, 0.34 pounds times 16. Yeah, you have to do a bunch more math to kind of, it's not impossible, of course, but, and you could make the calculation, I guess, in ounces and then convert to grams. That's a possibility as well, right? 28.345 times ounces. It gives you grams. But I just like the simplicity of grams and alpha acid giving, and then dividing by alpha acid, and I got grams again. And I haven't changed, where I'm going. And, the gram scales tend to be fairly precise because it's generally, most of those gram scales will go up to like, 9 or 10 ounces or something like that. And, pretty good for homebrew hop measurements.
That's right. And the resolution of those scales is usually plus or minus half a gram, which is, a really small amount. Mm-hmm. It's like a piece of a hop pellet. So
it's like a small rock.
Yeah, or really a pinhead sized thing if there's small amounts. So that's a real good example of a unit that maybe is better suited for the task at hand, and measuring hops on the homebrew scale or on the homebrew level. Mm-hmm. Versus, when you measure hops at Heretic, do you use a gram scale there?
No. Well, we measure in kilograms, so we still measure the hops in grams, but now we're talking, kilograms, and sometimes we'll just, here's a whole box, here's and then we'll weigh out on a scale into a bucket, however many, to make up the rest.
Yeah, and that's where the convenience factor comes in.
Mm-hmm. The whole box thing is quite nice.
Yeah.
Let's do this. Let's take a short break, and when we come back, I want you to give me another example of resolution in brewing, where we'd find a good example of something being a little bit better to use. All right? So we'll be back right after this.
Are you looking for a simple brewing system that's great for all grain brewing, but everything on the market seems to be full of compromises? Blickman Engineering has the answer. The Blickman Brew Easy All Grain Brewing System. The Brew Easy is a complete system with easy upgrades and a beautiful compact design, perfect for any size brewing location. At its core, the Brew Easy is built on 2 gorgeous Blickman Boilermaker brew kettles, a high-temperature March pump, and either a top-tier gas burner or the new Boil Coil electric heater. The Brew Easy adapter lid allows the pots to stack on top of each other, forming an efficient, strong, and compact brewing setup that comes in 5, 10, and 20-gallon batch sizes. Upgrade your Brew Easy system with full automated control by adding a Blickman Tower of Power temp controller, and make moving around easy with the Blickman Kettle Cart. The Brew Easy is modular. If you already own a Boilermaker kettle, you can build your Brew Easy by purchasing just the modules you need. The new Brew Easy all-grain brewing system. See it today at BlickmanEngineering.com and brew with Blickman quality on your new Brew Easy.
Since the first time the Brewing Network microphones turned on, More Beer was behind it. More Beer sponsors the programming on the BN because, like you, they love brewing. And like the Brewing Network, they love sharing their knowledge. Morebeer.com isn't just a website to place your next equipment or ingredient order. Morebeer.com also gives you access to free beer information that will make you a better brewer. Go to morebeer.com and click into the Learning Center. You'll find podcasts, technical facts, video tutorials, and more, including access to The Buzz, More Beer's social network of more than 5,000 members. And some of them might even be crazier about beer than you are. Get over to morebeer.com today and take advantage of The Buzz, the forum, the Learning Center, and make sure you're signed up to receive the newest More Beer catalog. More Beer, bringing you absolutely everything for beer making. When I order a beer, I want my server to know more about it than I do. I want someone who enjoys good beer and loves helping others enjoy it too. I want someone who knows how to pour a perfect pint for every beer style. I want a Cicerone.
The Cicerone Certification Program is creating the type of people who help you enjoy great beer. Home brewers and craft beer lovers know beer is more flavorful and complex than ever, and it takes some serious knowledge to store and serve beer right. Cicerones know beer. There are 3 levels in the Cicerone program: Certified Beer Server, Certified Cicerone, and Master Cicerone. Cicerones are truly the sommeliers of beer. The best beer locations have a Certified Cicerone on staff. Relaxed and unpretentious. Cicerones are tested on storing and serving beer, beer styles, flavor and tasting, the brewing process and ingredients, and pairing food with beer. Learn more about your next beer guide at cicerone.org. Certified Cicerone, because it takes top talent to present a perfect pint.
Your brewing water can be a mystery. If it's good enough to drink, it's good enough to brew with, right? We all know to perfect certain styles of beer, proper water chemistry is vital. But running water tests can be complicated and expensive, but not anymore. Industrial Test Systems is proud to introduce the new Smart Brew water testing kits, incorporating the exact iDip Smart Photometer system. The only photometer on the market that harnesses the power of the smartphone and runs water tests without you doing a pile of calculations. The iDip features two-way Bluetooth communication with the brain of the system, which is its own multilingual app. This allows limitless possibilities, including lab accuracy, free upgrades, test customization, over 35 available, mobile sharing, and more. You can keep a detailed history of your results. Email your water report to other brewers or share it on social media. Visit smartbrewkit.com now and learn more about the iDip photometer and all the tests it can do for you.
Back to the beer guys that make other beer guys look like wine guys. Brew strong.
All right, we're back. Before the break, we were talking about resolution of measurement systems. All right, so and we had hops as an example of why you might want to measure in grams on that. On a commercial scale, we still measure in grams. Not that we want 1 gram or another, but like I said, it makes it so easy to adjust when we know that if at 30 barrels we're using 20 kilograms, And then, we want to adjust the alpha acid for the alpha acid, 30 times,
you calculate the alpha acid units and then divide by the new percent alpha to get the new weight.
Right, but also, sometimes we'll have a little bit more yield in the kettle. And so sometimes, we'll have, it's 30 barrels, it's 20 kilograms. Well, now we have 31 barrels, so, it's X number. We can just multiply and then divide again, and off you go.
Mm-hmm. That's right.
So it makes it very easy to adjust for kettle volumes, and that's why I like grams. And I guess, pounds, ounces would still work, but you just end up with decimal points, and, it just seems harder to round down, I guess.
Well, depending on the scale you have, measuring tenths and hundredths of ounces, accurately can be an issue.
Okay.
So that's why, the gram scale with its, finer resolution is convenient that way, because there are gram scales readily available that, readily differentiate between 35 and 38 grams, 36 grams, and 34 grams.
Now, what else do you need a finer resolution for dealing with?
Well, temperature is another example, although it isn't as quite as useful as the gram scale. But temperature, Fahrenheit versus Celsius. A Celsius degree equals 1.8 Fahrenheit degrees.
Mm-hmm.
So, in other words, a Fahrenheit degree is a little less than half the size of a Celsius degree, which gives you better resolution on, say, your mash temperature.
Mm-hmm.
If you have a temperature controller and an accurate thermostat or a thermometer that can measure in Fahrenheit, now you've got that much more degree of control, potential control, on your mash temperature. Say at 152 versus 153.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas in Celsius, you'd be measuring, 65 versus 66 versus 67.
And that's one of my pet peeves about, if you take these, temperature controllers and you switch them between Fahrenheit and Celsius, it's still a 1 degree resolution. Your differential, your temperature set point will be like 1. It could be 1 Fahrenheit or 1 Celsius, and they're almost, one is almost twice what the other one is.
That's right.
And yet, the resolution, the detection capability of the unit is is the same either way. It's just they're kind of giving up on it.
You can't control it as finely with the one as the other, is what you're saying. Yeah.
So.
Yeah, that's a good point. On the other hand, the Celsius scale has some nice milestones built into it.
Mm-hmm.
For
Freezing
instance,
and boiling.
Beta amylase is, its optimum temp is 60 degrees C.
Mm-hmm.
65 degrees C is when the starches are generally fully soluble.
Now, is it really 60 is, ideal, or is it like, 60.7?
Well,
and we'll just call it 60. Right, and they're round.
It actually changes batch to batch, depending on the barley variety and a number of other factors.
Right. So I think they just said, well, let's just call it 60. For ease of remembering.
Yeah.
So I don't know that it's, yeah.
On the other hand, is it easier to remember 60 degrees C or 140 degrees Fahrenheit?
Mm-hmm.
60, 65, 70, 75, those are your kind of your mashing milestones.
Mm-hmm.
Beta, maximum fermentability, alpha, and then mash out, respectively.
Mm-hmm.
So, Celsius scale is kind of convenient that way. But in terms of, actually controlling your temperature, and say, monitoring the change in temperature of the mash with time. A higher resolution scale like Fahrenheit is probably more useful, in terms of a laboratory or process management control.
Now, here's another one that comes up quite frequently, and I think is interesting because it's not as clear-cut when we're comparing, volume versus weight, actually. So, one of the common things you'll see in recipes, and I've done this myself in some recipes, is, a teaspoon or a half teaspoon of, gypsum or, X tablespoons of, a tablespoon of coriander. And so it's being measured by volume. Yet, something like mineral salts, you probably want to weigh that by grams.
That's correct.
But, I think, part of that in these recipes is people a ways back did not have gram scales. It wasn't really that popular way back when. And so a lot of these recipes were, teaspoons or half a teaspoon or quarter teaspoon, trying to make it simpler for the brewer. And so, there's a, conversion volume to grams. I mean, on something like that, should we always be measuring by weight, or is there times when we want to measure by volume? I imagine volume can be better when something changes radically in moisture content. So
that's right.
Coriander, maybe the seeds are more moist, and so they weigh considerably more, but don't have that much more flavor. And when they're drier, they weigh less. So maybe volume for coriander would be the right thing.
Yeah, perhaps. I mean, as long as if you've based your addition, your amount, off of a standard seed size and packing density, and if you're sure that's consistent, batch to batch, then volume would work for that. However, given that the change in weight is maybe a couple percent, 1 to maybe 4%, depending on how much moisture is absorbed, that's a small variation on, say, the total weight if you measure that in grams. So in case of mineral salts, I always recommend weighing in grams. Items such as coriander or herbs, it'd probably be good to establish, or at least for yourself, a weight standard, weight standard measurement rather than a volume standard, so you'd be sure.
Some of those herbs can be so lightweight and so fluffy that can be tricky, I think.
If you 5 grams, trying to accurately measure 5 grams, something that's very fluffy is overflowing the little tray you're using.
Dried chamomile flowers come to mind.
Yeah.
They're very lightweight and fairly bulky, and so you can have, if you measure out, a few grams of them, it takes up quite a bit of space. So, if you're, it depends, I guess, on, what it is you're actually trying to measure.
Yeah. Weight tends to be more repeatable for solids than volume.
Mm-hmm. And liquids, I would still think you could do weight depending on, what the liquid was. If
that's right.
The concentration of sugars is not changing.
Liquid. The nice thing about liquids is that you usually have a fairly consistent density. Sugar solutions aside, so you can consistently measure those by volume without worrying about changes in gross weight.
Because they're essentially non-compressible, and the thing about things like chamomile flowers is you could squeeze them into a little brick, and it'll take 1/10 of the volume yet weigh the same.
That's right.
Mm-hmm. Okay. What else do we need to know about measuring? What other types of precision do we need to have in weighing out our materials?
I was going to mention that when it comes to choosing a unit, do you get wrapped around the axle of trying to measure, 1.78 grams, or do you just round it up to 2 grams and say that's close enough? For instance, let's say that we're doing some hop additions, 5-gallon batch. Let's take a look at, how much does the IBUs change if we change the amount of hops by 1 unit? So in terms of ounces, if we're changing from 1 ounce to 2 ounce boiled for 60 minutes, that represents, twice as many IBUs, going from 21 to 42. Whereas if we were measuring in grams, changing from 28 grams to 29 grams, that change is only is less than 1 IBU, about 0.75.
Which is essentially undetectable by the human palate.
That's right. In fact, they say, and I really don't know how valid this is, but they say that the resolution of our palate is about 5 IBUs.
See, I think I can do better than that. I do.
Okay.
I think I've done this before, and people, I would welcome somebody proving me wrong, but
sure.
I believe I can do better than that, which is I think I can get down to about 3.
Okay. Well, just FYI, for a 5-gram change, say from 28 to 33 grams, 10% alpha, 60-minute boil, 1050 wort, that equals about 4 IBUs. So, just a little FYI there.
And I'll tell you this, the amount of yeast you pitch, the strain of yeast you pitch, things relating to fermentation temperature, letting the beer sit like one more day, all those can change your IBUs more than, 5 IBUs.
Interesting. That's a good point.
So, it's great to be precise in measuring, and but like you're saying, 1.78 grams, well, that's 2. Just round it up. Don't freak about it, I think that's one of the
you
knowing when
lose
to round
by the significant figures. In other words, you get lost in the noise if you try to be too precise.
Now, what about techniques for weighing stuff out? Like, do you have any tips on people weighing out things like grains or hops or minerals or herb additions or malt extract or water?
Well, malt extract brings up a good topic. From the home brewing side, we're trying to calculate how much malt extract to use or how much grain to use to hit a certain recipe gravity. And this leads us into the whole discussion of efficiency and points per pound per gallon or liter degrees per kilogram. And I think for a lot of brewers, for instance, such as Trevor, he's looking at using metric units, maybe in preference to the U.S. units, trying to be a bit more repeatable. And if you're using kilograms, I mean that's a larger unit. Yet you have the decimal system. You have scales in grams that can make the precision of kilogram-based measurements quite good. And but you do have to take kind of work out a conversion factor for how many gravity points is 1 kilogram of extract going to give me in so many liters of water. So for example, liquid malt extract, 1 pound dissolved in enough water to create 1 gallon of wort would have a gravity of 1036, 1.036.
A liquid malt extract.
Liquid malt extract, yeah. And we call that, 36 points per pound per gallon. Dry malt extract is about 42 points per pound per gallon. In kilograms and liters, this works out to about 300 and 350 liter degrees per kilogram, respectively. So a lot larger number to have to calculate with. Not that I'm sure most people aren't calculating, gravity conversions in their head, but it does get a little more complicated with 300 versus 36. But it works the same way. If you dissolve a 1 kilogram of extract into, let's say, 10 liters of water, and we know that then that would give us a gravity of about 1.026. So it's the same kind of calculation, just the different units change the numbers slightly.
Well, that's when I was making starter wort, I would do the 1 to 10, and I knew that I'd end up right around that
1026. Yeah, that is a good starter wort gravity.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah. Now,
I do
you
DME
probably
and
use
end up a little higher in the 30s. And the great thing was you could adjust up and down fairly easy from that point because it's a base 10 type of thing.
Yeah, base 10 measurement system. Yes,
mm-hmm.
That's a good point. Yeah, that's volume with or fluid ounces opposed to dry ounces and pints and quarts and so on gets a little messier, and that is where liters from a calculation standpoint is better. Although when you're talking about a 5-gallon batch, 5 is a nice round number
mm-hmm.
compared to say 19 liters.
Right.
Although I suspect in Australia they mostly use 20-liter batches since that's a nice round number.
Right.
And 20 is not that different from 5 gallons. It's like
mm-hmm.
5.25 gallons, which is small potatoes.
All right, let's take another short break, and when we come back, I want to talk about more measurements in the brew day. Specifically, gravity measurements, finished beer measurements, those kinds of things. What's the best measure for that? All right, we'll be back right after this.
Beer tasting games that train your palate, a brewery locator, and the brand new interactive beer style guide. These are just a few of the awesome things you'll find on craftbeer.com. The style guide is a beautiful example of technology in beer. Browse beer style families or turn on the automatic beer style finder and explore beer through color, bitterness, ABV, aroma, and flavor. It's really the coolest way to explore every beer style besides having them all in front of you. Go to craftbeer.com and click on Beer Styles to start the guide. Plus, enjoy the rest of craftbeer.com, the Brewers Banter blogs, beer education, how to host a beer tasting, and the invaluable Draft Quality Manual. Tons of great content that makes your beer better. Visit the new craftbeer.com right now and explore the website that brings you all the passion, camaraderie, and creativity of the craft beer community. Craftbeer.com, celebrating the best of American beer. A few things happened 30 years ago.
ARPANET migrated to TCP/IP, and the Internet was born. Revenge of the Jedi was renamed Return of the Jedi and opened in theaters. Mila Kunis and Emily Blunt were born, beginning a rad fantasy in my mind.
But all of that pales next to the fact that HopTech opened its doors and began blowing homebrewers right out of their mash tuns. HopTech doesn't fuck around. Real people shipping awesome shit straight to you. Their new website is fast and easy to navigate. Or just call 800-379-4677 and let badass bitch Jade and the gadget guy Roberto blow their warm load of customer service all over you. So visit the site or visit the store in Dublin, California and support those that support you. Get your brewing on at hoptech.com.
Hey, my brewing brothers and sisters. This is Jamel Zanishev, and I want to tell you about Heretic Evil Twin. You might be familiar with my homebrew recipe, which uses massive late hopping to create a balance between the malty sweet and the hoppy bitter, along with an outrageous malt and hop character. I wanted a beer with the same bold hop and malt character, so we played around with the homebrew recipe until we were able to make a great commercial version too. We've created a beer rich in malt character, full of caramel, toast, biscuit, and an ever so subtle roast note. On top of that, we piled in an insane amount of Citra and Columbus hops at the end of the boil, as well as in dry hopping. This damn-the-cost approach to hopping gives Heretic's Evil Twin a great blast of citrus and tropical fruit that can't be matched by any other hop. The result is a bold, malty, hoppy, but easy-drinking beer. This is our top seller, our flagship beer, and I couldn't be prouder of it. Cheers.
To find Heretic beers near you, click on Find Some at hereticbrewing.com.
Williams Brewing is your online resource for prompt delivery of quality home brewing supplies. Since 1979, Williams Brewing has offered the finest equipment and the freshest ingredients, backed by the best customer service in the business. Do you like to mash using efficient fly sparging, but would like an easy way to heat your strike and sparge water? Enter the new Brewer's Edge electric mash water heater, a plug-in, anywhere, precisely controlled heater for strike and sparge water. Ditch the fumes and second burner and make mashing easy. Go to williamsbrewing.com today and browse their vast selection. That's williamsbrewing.com. Orders placed by 4 p.m. Pacific Time weekdays ship the same day. Brewing is easy the Williams way.
Back to the two guys that know how to turn beer into beer. This is Brew Strong.
All right, we're back. We're talking about measurements in brewing. And, you know, it seems like one of the simplest topics in a way. When I first saw this question, I was like, measurement. I answer this in 5 minutes. But on the other hand, it's actually quite complex, and there's a lot of nuances to it as to why you would choose one over the other. Now, during the brew day, measuring your wort gravity, measuring finishing gravities, what's the trick there, John?
Well, you have two options, of course. You have either hydrometers or refractometers. A hydrometer is more accurate because you are measuring what you intend to measure. You're tending to measure the difference in gravity of the solution. And so that's specifically what a hydrometer does, is it compares the gravity of a solution, the density of the solution, to a reference, pure water standard. Whereas refractometry measures the refraction of light as attributed to the sucrose content of the wort. Mm-hmm. Now, wort is only about 6% sucrose typically in an all-malt wort. However, the refractive indexes of the two sugars, sucrose and maltose, are pretty close, down to the third decimal point. So it's a small difference between them. But if you go to the ASBC methods, where they talk about determining the amount of soluble extract in the wort using a refractometer, they actually have you measure the density of the wort with a hydrometer to use that number in the calculation. So, to my mind, if you got to use a hydrometer anyway, you might as well just use a hydrometer.
Well, I think the nice thing about a refractometer is it's quick. It just takes a drop. You can use that kind of as a gauge during your brew day, like, how's my boil going? Am I getting the right evaporation? Right. Things like that.
It's a more convenient measurement than a hydrometer measurement.
Right. And they actually have some hydrometers or some refractometers that are calibrated using maltose, and including some digital ones that are set up specifically with maltose as the main sugar.
Okay.
What I've found is that if I take my hydrometer and instead of calibrating my refractometer at 0 using plain old water, what I would do is use a nice precise hydrometer, get a good reading there, and then take my average wort around what I usually tend to brew strength-wise, and then put that on my refractometer, and then adjust my refractometer to read the same as my hydrometer.
Oh, yeah.
And then I've got, it's essentially centered around my average brew day and my average, in maltose and all that. And that worked a little better for me. It's a little tricky because if it gets bumped or something like that, you can't just quickly readjust, recalibrate it with, water.
Right.
You need to have some wort available. But, I love the convenience of the refractometer.
Yep, that is very true. And as you say, it just takes a drop. You don't have to fill the jar. You don't have to, wait for that jar sample to cool down to room temperature, or I think the standard is actually 65 or something like that.
Yeah, it depends on...
which affects the perceived or the relative density of the liquid. So refractometer is nice in that regard, that you can, just the drop cools pretty quickly and can give you a faster number. The difference between the refractometer scale and the specific gravity scale, for gravities for Plato readings less than I think it's 10 Plato, you can just multiply by 4. But you can also take that multiply by 4 conversion higher, because if you go up to a Plato reading of say 20 or 30, you're only talking about maybe a 4 or 5% difference. From the calculated specific gravity versus the actual specific gravity. And again, 4 or 5% difference isn't a whole lot, when you're trying to, just get a good ballpark on how much your extract is. You're taught that's, 4 or 5% is like the third decimal place. So it's a difference of, say, 0.005 at the most, on your gravity.
Well, let me throw this out there for my pro-brewing brethren and any homebrewers that are using glycol chilling. Now, there's a difference in specific gravity and refractometry of ethylene glycol versus propylene glycol. And there are refractometers that'll do specific gravity and will measure glycol and measure the different types of glycol. They'll measure urine, all sorts of different type of refractometers. It's a very elegant solution for measuring all sorts of stuff, but they all need different scales. But the interesting thing, and I may be getting this wrong, but this kind of blew me away. All right, so ethylene glycol, you can measure concentrations up with a hydrometer past, all the way through. It's actually pretty linear, I believe. Propylene glycol, which is what we use in breweries because it's can be a food-safe type of glycol. Past a concentration, I want to say around 70%, something like that, the specific gravity drops. So your hydrometer is floating higher and higher until you get to 70%, and then it acts in the reverse, and the hydrometer drops in. And it won't. So you can't measure past a certain amount, which is one of the reasons why they say, well, if you're going to measure anything that concentrated, you should be using a refractometer for propylene glycol. I thought that was fascinating. I mean, it behaves differently once it reaches a certain concentration. It won't float the hydrometer as high anymore.
Yeah, that is remarkable.
I'm sure there's many other, liquids that behave that way. I had never heard of it. I did not think such a thing was. It just never dawned on me. Are there any other types of craziness like that in measuring things in the brewery that you know of?
No, I can't think of anything. That example with the glycol is probably the most unusual when it comes to measuring when it changes course like that. and all of a sudden it starts giving an inverse relationship.
Mm-hmm. Well, and it's like that thing where people say, well, glass is a liquid. It's like, okay, seems pretty solid to me, but I'll take your word for it. So it's one of those types of things where, what you imagine is true is actually not true. Common sense doesn't lend itself to everything there.
Right. One useful note on the Plato scale is helping you calculate your pitching rates.
How was that?
The old 1 million cells per milliliter per degree Plato. Rule of thumb.
Sure.
Or as I like to say it, 1 billion cells per liter per degree Plato.
Mm-hmm. I go less. I don't use that much yeast. I do 0.75. So
yeah, that's right.
Or I go 1.5 for lager yeast.
Yeah.
I don't want to be accused of using too much yeast.
But I mean that's the degree Plato scale comes in handy there, where if you've got a 15 Plato wort, multiply that becomes 15 billion cells per liter, and then multiply that by the number of liters you have in your batch.
Right, and 20 liters or 19, depending on where you're brewing. If you're south of the equator, then it's 20 liters. If you're north of the equator, it's only 19.
If now, at Heretic, Jamil, you use barrels, I imagine, to measure your volume.
Which is a little odd.
Yeah, it's an odd unit, 31 gallons, U.S. gallons.
Right.
Or 117 liters.
Right,
Again,
right.
kind of an odd number.
117.3 something, I think. Yeah, it's difficult because the federal government requires us to report in barrels. The state government requires us to report in gallons, and then it's just easier to calculate everything in liters. We use 50-liter kegs. It's like, well, I'd like to stick to liters, but it's 13.2 something.
Yeah. And if you measure your batch size in hectoliters, then 50-liter keg makes sense, doesn't it?
Right. So it's now, an interesting potpourri of measurements. Yeah.
A hectoliter, for everyone's education, is 100 liters. And so a U.S. barrel at 117 liters is not that different. So if you ever get into a discussion of, brewery size, and someone says, well, I've got a 10-barrel system, another person says, I have a 10-hectoliter system, they're pretty close.
Yeah, the guy with the 10 hectoliter is a little bit small.
Yeah.
The guy with
it's about 85% as large as a barrel.
The 10-barrel guy, he's got a bigger unit. Speaking of big units, have you heard the other Brewing Network shows recently? Have you heard Jay with the Sour Hour?
I have not had a chance to listen to it lately, but I've heard a couple of them. They were quite interesting.
Have you heard the big unit himself, JP, with Dr. Homebrew?
Yeah, I've heard that one.
There you go. That's the big unit. Have you heard that guy, Jamel, on Brewing with Style?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Never miss it.
All right. Good lie there, Palmer. Let's do this. Speaking of good lies, let's take a short break, and when we come back, we'll wrap up with more of your interesting information on measurements right after this.
Craft beer and kick-ass music. This is the year to attend the 20th annual Mammoth Festival of Beers and Bluesapalooza in beautiful Mammoth Lakes, California. Enjoy more than 80 breweries like Mammoth Brewing, Anchor, Fireman's, Bear Republic, Anderson Valley, Stone, Green Flash, Firestone Walker, Sierra Nevada, Lagunitas, Deschutes, and many, many more. On stage, you'll hear Trombone Shorty and Orleans Avenue, Johnny Lang, Robert Cray, Robin Ford, Ruthie Foster, Carolyn Wonderland, Tommy Castro and the Pain Painkillers, the Sly Brothers, and much more. It's the most incredible lineup ever to take a Mammoth stage. Don't miss the 20th Annual Mammoth Festival of Beers and Bluesapalooza, Thursday, July 30th through Sunday, August 2nd. Tickets and more information at MammothBluesBrewsFest.com or call 888-825-5484. Tickets for some events will sell out early. Get yours at MammothBluesBrewsFest.com or call 888-825-5484 today. Your support of the Brewing Network means everything to us. We couldn't produce shows without you. And we love giving you something extra for that support, like Brew Your Own magazine. You already know it's a great brewing magazine full of recipes, equipment how-tos, discussions of beer styles, and brewing techniques. Whether you're new to brewing and just starting out or you're an old pro, you'll always learn something from the articles in Brew Your Own. Plus, they're amazing special issues like plans for building a Brutus 10 system, 250 classic clone recipes, and the Homebrewer's Answer Book. Brew Your Own magazine and BYO.com are awesome resources for any brewer, whether for yourself or as a gift. When you subscribe or resubscribe from the Brewing Network homepage, you directly support programs like this. Get a great magazine and support the Brewing Network. Subscribe to Brew Your Own right from thebrewingnetwork.com.
Say hello to my little friend.
You've heard about White Labs Pure Pitch yeast. Pure Pitch is yeast grown right in its final packaging. That means yeast that has never been exposed to the environment. And White Labs Pure Pitch yeast for homebrewers is now available to everyone at homebrew retailers nationwide. Easy to use, perfectly sized, and ready to pitch. White Labs yeast, packaged using their Flex Cell process, ensures the purest yeast on the market. Visit whitelabs.com to learn more about Pure Pitch, Flex Cell technology, and how it's created. Then visit a homebrew retailer near you for your own perfectly sized package of Pure Pitch yeast. And you can say hello to your own little friend. www.whitelabs.com.
Learning to brew has never been so disgusting. This is Brew Strong.
All right, we're back. We're having a great discussion about measurements, and it sounded like a dry subject, but there's a lot of wetness to it. I think.
Yeah, there's lots to cover.
I think Trevor came up with a good one here. That's why we encourage people to send in their ideas for shows. There are questions for Q&A, and we're going to do a Q&A show about fruit in beer after this to brewstrong at thebrewingnetwork.com. And trust me, we look at all of them. Some we just delete. Naked pictures, we save those. Absolutely. So, send them all in. We enjoy them all. All right, so John, touch on anything we haven't touched on real quick, and give the listeners some tips as to where they should focus and what they should do.
Okay, well, I was just going to follow up with dry hopping. You often hear dry hopping talked about in terms of pounds per barrel.
Mm-hmm.
And in merry old England, they would talk about 2 and 3 pounds of hops per barrel. Well, that was an imperial barrel, which I believe is 43 U.S. gallons versus our 31.
Mm-hmm.
And you have to remember that those were lower alpha and lower oil hops than what we currently brew with today.
Mm-hmm.
So you had a lot more, just plant matter in 2 pounds per barrel than we would today. 2 pounds per barrel today is a pretty
peasant
hefty
matter too. Sometimes peasants would fall into the grinding machines, and so you'd be hopping with peasants.
Up, yes. But I thought I'd mention for people that 1 pound per barrel is equivalent of a per U.S. barrel is equivalent to about a half ounce per gallon, or 4 grams per liter.
Mm-hmm.
And 2 pounds per barrel is about 1 ounce per gallon, or about 7 grams per liter.
Mm-hmm.
So just in case you're ever looking at a dry hopping recipe and you see a pounds per barrel reference, there's a little conversion factor for you.
That's a good one. All right. Anything else? Anything we should know?
I think to summarize, I mean, don't try to be too precise in brewing, because very often, the precision that you think you're getting is going to be lost in the rest of the noise of the process.
Mm-hmm.
If you weigh out your grain to the nearest gram, say 10 kilograms of grain that weighed out to the nearest gram, but then you don't pay close attention to your volume measurements of your water and your wort, well, then that precision is lost.
Mm-hmm. Well, and I've always said that there's a lot of errors in measurement that compound themselves in brewing, and sometimes we go, well, how much of this should I use? It's like, well, it doesn't really matter. Measure it in a repeatable way, and then if it wasn't enough, next time use more. If it was too much, use less. It doesn't matter if the scale is A through Z or 1 through 10. Just use, just pick a point. And the most important thing is that your measurements be repeatable.
That's right.
Especially if if you're going to change a piece of equipment like a cable modem, let's say, or a your thermometer or your hydrometer. You might want to measure the two side by side and see that they actually do read the same, because if they don't, then you've changed your whole scale of brewing and your repeatability is now gone. And
that's
repeatability is the critical thing, because your palate's going to tell you, no, I want it more hoppy. So who cares what the formula you used was or anything like that? You just know you need more than you had last time, so however you measured it last time, measure a little bit more, and try it again. And that's the way to brewing greatness, I think.
Good point.
All right, another fine show brought to you by Blickman Engineering and the Brewing Network, and all those fine people down at the Hop Grenade. I don't know.
Why not?
Yeah.
They're helping bring you this show.
That's right, especially in that fine gentleman's stall there with the lawn chair, the sprinkler.
Yeah.
It's beautiful.
Do they give you that crisscross pattern, though, when you stand up?
Yes.
Yeah. It's like... and it really, just sweeps it clean. Yeah, from left to right, from up to down, you are spotless. And if you want to continue being spotless, I suggest you check out our fine sponsor, Blickman Engineering. Check out the Brewing Network store. There's a lot of goodies there, and when you get those goodies, when you buy the hats, the shirts, the glassware, eventually they'll get books back in. I don't know when, but eventually they'll get books back in. You'll get all any profit there goes to the bottom line of the Brewing Network, directly to the Brewing Network. There's no middleman that's sucking it all up. Goes to the Brewing Network and helps keep shows like this on the air. So if you want to keep hearing it, brewingnetwork.com/store. Until then, everybody, brew strong.
Brew strong.